what do we want to talk about today?
Today,
Co-owning?
today I planned on us talking about working with your spouse and being a business owner with your spouse and what that's like and
It's,
pros and cons.
man, and this is probably the number one question when somebody gets to know us, because I'd say our relationship dynamic is, I'm sorry, I'm going to move around. The dynamics of our relationship are just so much different than, a lot of other couples where traditionally, what we see at least a lot here in the South is, a lot of guys' nights or a lot of girls' nights or, you know, people are obviously fanatics of SEC football and sports, and that's never been either of us. That's never been my thing. I'd say the only thing that's my thing consistently has probably been you and working, and and that's the basis of it all. And there's just never been those, hey, I'm going out with the boys, you go out with the girls. I mean, for the love of God, I think we all even met up on our bachelorette and
We did.
bachelor party night.
We did.
So I do think there can be a lot of divinity surrounding being in business with your spouse, but I think we've also talked to many couples where they've done it for periods of their marriage and it hadn't worked out and it's been a large point of contention, and everybody decides to go back to more of a traditional form of work quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think I'm so team Tim. I'm like, whatever you want to do, I'm your number one fan. And I like really enjoy being the number one fan.
And I think even beyond that, like at this point, because we've definitely had those talks. You told the whole world that I fired you when you almost quit fired last year. You didn't get fired. You just decided you weren't having it for a minute there. And just the thought, if you ever chose to go to work somewhere else, I'm like, you're working for another man, just especially in the South, like more often than not, leaders in business, it's probably still pretty weighted heavy on the male dominant side in Knoxville. I think, wouldn't you say that's fair, Milo? Whereas out west, I think you see a lot more female
It's a bit more
leadership.
50-50, yeah.
But like if there was ever an instance where you did a favor for another man in leadership, I'd be like, what the F? Like
Yeah.
he can go get his own damn cup of coffee. Even if it was just something where you happened to be there and I'd be like, that's just, you ain't getting coffee. I don't ask you to get coffee for me. Why the hell's another man asking you to get coffee?
Yeah.
Not that you'd be like a secretary or something like that, but I mean, that's something that coworkers do still,
Yeah.
I'd imagine. Like Logan, for instance, gets us all coffee, but by no means am I like, hey, while you're out, grab me a cup of Starbies, would you?
Yeah. It would be awkward. I mean,
I just think a rigid schedule would be hard at this point too.
so I think we should probably go how we talked a little bit on how I started working for you, but it hasn't always been as smooth as it is now because
All right, I tell a story from my point of view, and then you feel like you can correct any
okay,
fallacies,
okay.
because I do think this is a good story,
Okay, go ahead.
and it's just funny how it came up, really. But so we'd bought that old dilapidated house before we'd got engaged, and I was full on working for myself. I mean, honestly, from the time I was 16 at that point, and we bought the house. I was going on year 6 at this point, and I'd had some sporadic spouts of working part time here or there, especially in high school. But once we were back together, we had the house, remodeling it. You were finishing up college. You decided it was the right time for you to move out of your parents' house and move in here, and we had another roommate yet. And
Shout out to Casey.
Casey,
That was
that was a fun time, and then
yeah.
Zach too, wild time. But essentially, you graduated college and you were on the job hunt for an extremely specific job, working for a
A
nonprofit, and
specific nonprofit.
very
I
specific.
specifically wanted to work for.
Probably shouldn't name drop it.
Why?
I don't know, because it's probably not going to be in the best light.
Oh, it was okay. I just never
Okay,
got hired.
true.
Which now I'm like, you were fresh out of college. I wanted to work for the American Cancer Society, specifically planning Relay for Life events. And I applied for that job across the Pacific Northwest area multiple times, never even got an interview. But now I'm like, a baby just out of
Sure.
college with very little experience handling volunteers. So
Right.
it was a valid choice. American Cancer Society was valid.
And you actually ended up taking a job for Papa Murphy's corporate, though, because, you'd interviewed, obviously, with the ACS, with March
Yeah.
of Dimes.
Yeah.
Not really a good fit anywhere.
Yeah.
And you got a phenomenal paying job, though.
Yeah,
You did.
I lucked out on that.
Really?
I worked for, it was corporate Papa Murphy's in Vancouver, Washington, and they were, for all the franchise owners, they were starting online pizza ordering.
And this was early. Like, this was honestly, like, when you told me what the project was, I was like, that's a phenomenal idea. Because nobody was doing it yet,
Yeah,
really.
it was like the system where you could like pick the crust, pick the sauce, pick all the toppings, and you like the consumer could do that on their own online, and then the order would be sent to the franchise owners but basically the rollout was horrible, and my job was to answer the phone for the franchise owners and try and calm them down
And train them on
and
how to use the
train them on
system.
how to use the system.
Because Sarah's super techie. She definitely was qualified for an IT job right out of college.
I am not techie. I just interview really well. I was so underqualified for this job. It was wild. So anyways,
Maybe a little overpaid
I
for
was
the position. For the exact position.
Yeah, overpaid and underqualified. Dramatic.
Which is a good position to be in, though, in any work atmosphere,
Yeah.
I really think that can be healthy at times. Oversell yourself, and then you're like, well, I got to get her done now.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Tim's working for himself still.
And you
living the
were
life.
fairly happy at Papa Murphy's. Not doing what you want to do, but you had great coworkers. You had a lot of, a lot of fun people to work with.
I learned that I struggle sitting in a cubicle all day.
What's funny is I never it wasn't any of those jobs I could come visit you during work.
No, you could not come visit me. And then we got married, and they didn't know I was going on my honeymoon. I don't know how they didn't know that. And then they thought I was coming back, but then I no-showed for a week because we were on our honeymoon
So we were
in Mexico.
having a good time.
And I didn't have cell service because for some reason we didn't pay for international. And then I came back and they were like, "Oh, we thought you quit." But I didn't quit.
And then you put in your 2 weeks.
And then I put in my 2 weeks notice, yeah.
Then you went to work at a nonprofit.
Finally.
Social working, kind of.
Yes.
And this is where it really came to a head.
Yeah.
Great company.
It was a really fun job. It was sales. I helped people with special needs find jobs. So I'd go to small businesses all across Portland, Oregon, and try and talk them into hiring people that were, really great. Either they had a traumatic brain injury. I had a lot of people that had Down syndrome, and I'd help them find jobs that they really enjoyed. And that was really fun. I helped people
I think
that
the
were
sex offenders were a little hard.
Yeah, I helped deaf people find jobs in the
did.
deaf community, and that was really fun too. But then I got a promotion helping sex offenders and felons find jobs, and I hated it.
So they'd end up on my job sites all the time getting some work experience. That was always fun.
Yeah.
Bring them by. We put them to work for a little bit.
Yeah.
So you got pretty wore out there. I remember there was one particular phone call, and I think we were finishing up some siding repair and paint over at the Langston's house because it would have been leading up to when another friend of ours was getting married there. So they're prepping the house to have a wedding, and you called me, and you were fit to be tied. You were pissed off that I didn't even go to college. The phone call went something along Cliff Notes of, I went to school for 4 years, and I'm expletively miserable at my job, and I don't like it, and I don't get paid enough, and you're happy at what you do, and you get to do what you want, and you didn't even finish college. And it was an interesting week for us, I'd say.
Yeah, we don't fight often. Truly, maybe once a year we'll have a 10-minute skerfuffle, and then and then it's done. We just are twin flames. We just don't fight. It's just not who we are.
We don't got much to complain about.
But I was so
pissed.
mad.
You're so pissed.
I was so mad because I went to college for 4 years with this very specific goal. I could not reach the goal. I was unhappy with all these other job options that I wanted to do. And it's hard being a young adult when you you spend all this money and time and energy thinking that this is your goal to, I mean, it could be anything. Fill in the blank here. I want to do this specific thing. And life hits you in the face hard. And I was so jealous of you because you knew what you wanted to do. You achieved that goal. You were happy as a little clam, just swinging your hammer every day. And I was just fucking pissed.
But here's the thing: is I'm not going to be outpittied. So what did I do? I took a job. Took a job, so I could also be miserable.
Yeah, because we thought that was.
And
yeah.
then it turned out it sucked that we didn't make much money. Because, I think I probably took a 60% pay cut, 70% pay cut.
You know what the saddest thing was? I feel like you took a job to be miserable with me because we thought that's what you're supposed to do.
I mean, amongst some other opinions of people. But,
Yeah.
I think a
Yeah.
lot of it was just the pettiness. I'm like, fine, you want to... I was like, all right, this is just my petty nature, which we worked through
This
that.
is sad because
But
I
was
thought
like,
you took it to be miserable with me.
That's me out pettying, though. I'm like, all right, I'll be miserable too, and let's see if this works. And then the second, and I took a job that honestly paid very, very well. I took a job for a very, very large fence and deck company, being honestly one of their lead carpenters. They're honestly only qualified carpenter. The projects that I'd be on and manage were 6-figure deck installs. Like, they were for very, very fancy clients, very high income level clients. And honestly, I liked the job. I didn't hate the job. I had to work too much, but
Yeah, you worked a lot.
It's also was one of those, it was a very weird, confusing pay structure where it was hourly plus commission plus lead pay plus this. And then like you get your paycheck and you look at that and you're like, well, that's about half what I expected to make, So that didn't last long because I think, how long did I even work there? Maybe 7 months, 8 months?
Maybe. I remember it was such an adjustment for our relationship because Tim and I met each other when we were 12 years old, and we've been best friends, basically inseparable ever since. Like, when we weren't at school, we were hanging out together at skate park or the mall or whatever you do when you're a teenager, and then as we got older, when we weren't at school and we weren't working, we were together. And then, we were living together, we were married. And it was the time in our relationship that we saw each other probably the least.
Well, that was before we were married because I quit.
Oh, yeah.
I quit right before we left.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Maybe Rise and Papa Murphy's are backwards. You worked at Rise first, didn't you? And then Papa Murphy. I can't remember.
I can't remember either.
But it was interesting because then I was a commuter,
Yeah.
because I was working about 20 miles away from where we live. But here's the one thing in hindsight is I can honestly say, like, Tim's fencing probably wouldn't be where it was if it wasn't for me working there because, naturally as somebody that, I got paid per foot to do something. So I'd go install fence at this company sometimes, which is a very, very well-known fence company. I'd say they're more well-known for fence than they are for their deck and carpentry work. And so...
Yeah, due to being in the industry, we probably shouldn't name drop that one.
Yeah, no, we won't name drop that one. So I learned fence, but even more beyond that, I learned systematizing, like everything they did, which looking back now, they were a little unorganized, but this was during the recession too, so they weren't all that busy. Like their systems though, like we were just talking about their systems last week, about how we'd go on site and print out and da-da-da-da-da. Like they did a lot of things extremely streamlined, especially for the year. Like that would have been 2013. And they were ahead of their time as far as the trades go. The gentleman that started it treated it like the lifelong fortune it ended up producing for him. And I'm not saying like I'm going to hang my hat with pride that I worked there, but I am, in hindsight, glad I took a substantial pay cut because that was almost like schooling, like I got a stipend pretty much, and then I got to learn what they were doing.
I remember that phone call when you called me and you quit.
I was fed up though because I gave it all for them.
Oh yeah, and I remember I was so scared that you were gonna quit.
We all knew I was gonna quit. It was
just a
they
matter
even
of
knew it was
time.
coming to a head, and there was some large indifference about pay and just how things go. And honestly, like my direct manager was great, but at the same time, like part of my job was supposed to be pretty much in the office doing the permitting and all of that, which they paid flat rate on the permits. Like that's where a lot of the pay structure was supposed to be. And my manager was doing all of those and leaving me with exactly zero. And so I pretty much walked in and I said, hey, you know what? I'm not going to come back after my honeymoon, da 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 da. And they said, well, you either give us a 6 week heads up or you leave right now. And they're calling my bluff, and I said, all right, well, it's nice seeing you. It was like a Wednesday. I left mid project. I didn't care. I was done. It was also a really rough project I was on at the time where it was extremely undersold. And yeah, I think I, left on a Wednesday and had my next job personally lined up on Thursday anyway. But it worked. It was a weird time though, because it's like we're gonna come back from our honeymoon and what's the workflow gonna be like, and also, your job hadn't been going too well either, and there came a time shortly after we got married that we had another skerfuffle. And I think I told you to shit or get off the pot,
Yeah.
and probably much worse ways to say it. But
You said, I don't even know if it hit me. You're like, if you're going to be miserable, I don't want to hear it. Stop complaining because it's your choice.
I said you can quit the job today, and it does not matter. I think you quit it the next day.
I did.
I don't think you gave him notice.
Nope, I
think
quit
you
the
just
next
walked
day.
out. I
Yeah.
said, I got enough work for both of us. You just quit it. You run everything in the office, keeps me on the job site. And that was really the first time, too, because then at that point it's our business, right? That I could focus on hiring the right staff. Like, we went from running one crew with me on it to running like 2.5, 3 crews. We had one employee just doing exterior cleaning, window washing, and roof treatments. And then he would swing over to the construction company, too. And then we had my cousin. I'm so country, Jason.
Yeah. I remember I didn't know anything about anything, but you would leave would you text me phone numbers? Because they would call your cell phone, and then you would have me set up the estimates, and then there wasn't enough to keep me busy all day, but I would go run to like the carpet place,
CFM.
and I'd get material for the next job. Or I remember we did that tiny house. Well, you never ended up building it, but I helped them pick out all their like finishings and stuff so that we could do the quote. I loved it.
Yeah,
Oh,
they were a little crazy.
yeah, they were a little crazy, but I loved that.
Did a lot of decks, did a lot of fence,
I'd go
ton
on.
of fence.
We'd in the evening times, you'd get home from the job site, and I would hop in the truck, and we'd go do the quotes together. And you would talk to the client, and I would just stand there and like draw the deck or write what they wanted or hold the tape measure for you.
Yep. No, we did it all. It was busy. That was back when I was on the job all day. Do some quotes and then go out and meet up with friends usually after that.
Yeah.
It was fun. But really, that was just a time where like our services were whatever somebody'd pay us to do. And we had the resources though. Like, we'd sub some things out. Like, we ended up doing a ton of roofing.
Yeah.
And we had Alex, our roofer that was from Montana.
We never said
he would
no.
knock out some dang roofs for us though.
Yeah.
So that was the first time we really leveraged, because I'd get up. Honestly, I'd order an Eagle View for most of those quotes, do the takeoff. I think Alex was only charging us $85 a square to put on like ICO shingles. And man, he was good too. Came from a family of roofers, but that was that. So we stayed. So we got married in 2014, and I guess we kept on keeping on at Tim's Construction and Remodeling for a couple of years there.
Yeah. Lessons we learned.
And then Glenn talked you into getting your real estate license.
Yeah. Well, lessons we learned with Tim's Construction about working together. I, for some reason, felt like I needed to be on the job site. Like, in my mind, I was still like, okay, a work day isn't, these are my tasks, A, B, C, and D, and when they're done, I'm done. A work day should be 9 to 5, remember? And so I'd like finish whatever it was and then felt like I needed to be on the job site with you guys.
Hey, let me go pick up behind you guys.
Yeah, and so I'd go to the job site, which was fine, but I really like I don't have I'm not a contractor. Like, I don't have a skill
I was
set.
still doing our marketing then. Like, I was in a networking group and starting to dabble in the Facebook ads, and we still did yard signs back then. We still printed a bunch of T-shirts for some reason, although I don't know who we gave them out to. And then, because Jason would always wear your extras anyway. But man, I mean, there's a few projects that really stick out in my head that we did though. And we had some partnership employees come and go at 2 different times and learned that we're really not partnership people. And then we started looking at flip houses because we had Glenn, we'd got through our remodel and we had a bunch of equity and nothing really ever quite got fulfilled because even back then the buy-in was $300,000 for something that needed another $50,000 of rehab,
Yeah.
and it was just a little out of reach for our pockets at the time.
And I was excited to be able to to design it ourselves, not like ask a client what they wanted. And that was exciting. Plus, I always didn't like being on job sites with clients, like especially when they were home, because I didn't have a skill set. Like literally, I would just clean the job site. So I was excited to be able to be there, but not feel like I was watched all day.
Because we did a lot of interior remodel. So yeah, that was, and I didn't ever like working on homes where people were there either. Like the remodels I'd try to really get competitive on were whole home. They were going to move in X amount of weeks. And we did a bunch of those. Like I can think of a few in Brush Prairie, a few in Vancouver, a couple in Battleground where we got real lucky where it'd be like, we're rehabbing a whole side of the house. It's masked off. Nobody else is going to be in there. But I mean, really, when I look back, it's just, I mean, there were moments where it was horrible, and I'm like, I don't know why we're even doing this, and we wouldn't make money. But overall, I mean, we got lucky most of the time because there wasn't too much reasoning behind pricing. It was just how long is this going to take and how many days, and we never built in like drive time when we were working in Portland or the tax rate. I mean, we're lucky we didn't get caught with our pants down.
Yeah.
But that all led to moving to Tennessee. And really at this point too, talking about partnerships and working together, it was really, that relationship was more you worked for me at that point.
Yeah.
Just because
Oh, yeah.
there was a lack of probably, not experience, but confidence
yeah.
more than anything.
Yeah. Experience for sure. I didn't even know what needed to be done to do it. You know what I mean? I did.
And you really hadn't worked in any customer service
No.
previous, at least to the degree where you're talking finances and
Yeah.
payments and terms.
Yeah. So then when we both became real estate agents, that was our first partnership. Like you had roles when we were realtors, I had roles when we were realtors, and that was our first experience of being like, okay, this is your job and this is my job. And we don't you didn't try to do my job, I didn't try to do your job. So Tim's job was always and always has been like the lead generator for our business. Like he'd sit on the phones every morning and he would call the expireds or call the canceled or
Meet with the FISBOs.
meet with the fit. Yeah, his job was to bring in the business. And then once he was able to bring in the business, I would take it from there and basically do all the paperwork part. And then anytime that a realtor needed to negotiate or something needed to be negotiated or handled, Tim would always handle that. And then I would do the paperwork or the client care side of it. And Tim would handle all these crazy realtors. Because
The real estate market's wild. It's not for the faint of heart. I really loved the business building side of it. I really am not a big fan of being an unpaid customer service representative, though, because there's really not a whole lot of that client agent interaction is extremely one-sided. Like you feel like as an agent from time to time, even if you do the correct paperwork for like a buyer's representation agreement, you're still working towards something that may never close. You're not getting compensated for any of your time along the way most of the time. And that's just something that's really tough. And your money is so emotional. And I think that's really where I learned a lot of my lessons on how emotional money is, was by representing clients, you and I representing clients on purchases and sales, because, a lot of times it's invisible money too. It's equity money. It's not money you necessarily, put blood, sweat, and tears in for, but, it's money to your name at the same time. And, people are trying to, get on the better side of the teeter-totter from jumping to one house to the next. And they're like, yeah, I want to sell this house. I want to have the exact same payment. I want to put very, very little down. And at the same time, I also want to buy X, Y, Z with my equity. So you're playing this, multi X, Y. It's going to, what are we going to do here? Because we got to build in a trip to the Bahamas. That's $8,000, and all of these unrealistic expectations that we all have sometimes when we sell our homes. Like, I know I've definitely gotten there. And we've sold some personal homes for an extreme amount of upside because of the work we'll do. But it's hard to bring people back down to earth. It's hard.
I think when we were realtors too, like to me, that's when I learned a lot about entrepreneurship and just like how to be a partner of yours instead of how to just be a staff member. I learned a ton in that like year period of time.
Yeah.
Most importantly, talking about working with your spouse and being an entrepreneur with your spouse is Tim's role has always been not well, I mean, still the provider. Like he would go out and find those leads and even in real estate, which to be honest, like I don't think that was something I would have ever prospered on by myself just because of my personality. I don't like negotiating and I don't like how confrontational it all is and I don't like how aggressive things have to be sometimes. And Tim flourishes in those environments. And I think that was big in figuring out how to be a spouse and work together is let him let you be the provider, like let you protect me because those are things that's important to you as a husband. And those things have kind of prospered now into Tim's fencing because Tim still is like, even though I do a lot of the marketing, well now Milo does a lot of the marketing,
But
but
we really just keep hiring people for what we like to do.
but
I mean, it's something we say a lot, though, is there can truly only be one chief.
There-
Like
yeah.
even when we give other people business advice, which it's not that we solicit to advise others in business, but, that's a frequent question we get asked for. And, it always seems like there's the two people who want to be partners and they have this great business idea, but truly in any partnership, like we're in a partnership, there can only be one chief. And really for me, that comes from a provider standpoint. Like I want to shoulder 100% of the burdens for everybody in this company. And now like Logan and I, we butt heads about that. Mike and I, we butt heads about it. But truly, if there is a mountain of shit to climb, like I'm the one barefoot climbing up it because nobody signed up for that but me. But also in our partnership, for instance, like I want to shoulder all the losses and I want you to shoulder all the wins. Like I don't even mind. I love misery. I'm just a person that absolutely loves getting through misery. And also part of being a provider, like there's a few major aspects to being a provider, but in our marriage, Mama says she wants security, so I'm going to make sure that there's money in the bank every single day of the year. I'm going to make sure that any of Mama or little boy's needs are met. If little B's been working hard in school and he wants a dirt bike, like trust me, part of my provider nature is to make sure we're making the type of income that we can walk into the motorcycle shop and just pull one off the showroom floor on a Wednesday. And that's not sitting here being braggadocious. That is just what being a provider is. That's what being an entrepreneur is. Like I'm not in entrepreneurship to not make money. Like at the end of the day, I don't walk in these doors for free. Like my head has a price tag on it every single day. And that's not because I want to be a burden to the company, but it's because my commitment and my vows to you when we got married was to be the provider that you never knew you wanted.
no, I didn't know I wanted that.
And
I thought we were supposed to be miserable and both work our day jobs.
no, hell no.
Come home every night and bicker. And I'll make spaghetti about 4 nights a week.
I'm glad we were eating less spaghetti. I'm saying that. I'll eat some spaghetti, but 4 nights a week, man. Just too many. It's too many Ziplocs in the fridge full of noodles for my liking. We never eat them.
It did take a lot of time though to get out. For Tim was never in that employee mindset. Never. I mean, even when you worked for that fence company, you still were never in an employee
I was mowing
mindset.
lawns at 9 years old. I mean, I always made my own money. Like
Yeah.
even growing up as a kid, even in high school, like I always had a bank account with money in it. Like if we wanted to go out before I had my driver's license, after,
Yeah.
bought the car, anything that I drove young was bought by me and me only. Paid my own cell phone bill because I wasn't allowed to have a cell phone. So, like if you ain't got money, what do you got?
Yeah.
What you got?
I think what I've learned my role to be once I got out of that employee mindset, which took some time, like years to figure out how to not be an employee or think like an employee. I've just learned that what I'm good at in this partnership is Tim is a big thinker. You're a big thinker. You're like
Oh God, yeah.
you're a very big thinker, and I'm not, but I've learned that I'm really good at you be the big thinker and come up with the idea and start it. Like I also can't, my brain doesn't do the starting either, but once you start it, I've learned how to take it from there and like come up with something to make it work.
Sure. I mean, in full disclosure too, like I go into personal crisis about every 24 months, to where I'm always going to be my own biggest critic because I don't compare myself to those around me. Like when we have these conversations where it's, and it probably does cause strain between you and I, to where it's just like, you'll be like, just open your eyes, live this beautiful life. And that's just never enough for me. And it's not even from a materialistic standpoint. It's just when I look back at the last 12 months or last 24 months, if there was any time where there's going to be a revolving conversation to where like we can't do it right now because of X, Y, or Z, it's always going to be a struggle. Like we just went through this last week, and I'm like, I just feel like I've been extremely stagnant for 6 months. I haven't pursued my goals with 110%. Like I don't do well failing, and I have, full disclosure, like well into the 6 figures of failures of businesses from last year. And I think that finally all came to a head. And I mean, obviously I'm over it, we made it through it, but I'm disappointed in myself that, I gave 70, 80, 90% for 12 months. Whereas, if I would have gave 100 or 110% or 120%, like people that ended up moving away would still live here. People that didn't thrive financially that we were in business with would be thriving financially. And we lost some great employees here at Tim's Fencing due to things not panning out, or not at Tim's Fencing but at one of the other companies, because things just, I don't feel like I was rolling the ball uphill fast enough. Like any business, when you start it, I have the full reality that it's not going to be profitable from day one. But at the same time, like I think the reality of being just a financial backer of something and providing some leads for a business is just never enough. Like if you're going to start a business, especially with your spouse, it's got to be 100% or it's not going to work, especially in today's economic climate.
Yeah. But this conversation is what we have behind closed doors.
Sure.
Like this conversation is what we had in the gym last week, after having a tough week and struggling communicating with each other. But like I hear you say all that, and I know I said this last week, but like this is what it's like being in business with your spouse, because you spent so much time with our baby, and like that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
You spent a lot of time on your health. And, like you don't see this as the yin and the yang. Like Tim is so hard on himself, but it's such a blessing to work with your husband, because like I feel like I get to put that goodness into you.
I slept too much. I fully realized that. I went from sleeping 4 to 5 hours a day to, sleeping 8. Like I'm just not
Well, you can
I'm
give me some.
not a feline. I don't need to sleep for 8, 12 hours a day. I just slept too much. We bought too nice of a bed. That's why I want to get rid of the memory foam and go back to a pillow top, because I slept less on it.
Wow.
Too hard to get
No,
up.
we're not doing that. But this is what we've had to learn how to do. We've been married for 10 years in July, and I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot to, like, literally we wake up the same time.
I usually sleep in a little. Let's not lie to the
Okay,
folks.
fine. I'll sleep in.
15 whole minutes.
But like a day where we aren't not by each other, like what?
A lot of
2 hours? If it's more than 2 hours, I'm like, where's my husband?
We drive to work separate. Right now we got a little bit of a commute, so that's about our time alone is all it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want it any other way.
No. And I think, obviously I'm more thrilled to be able to spend the time with Brantley and be able to pick him up occasionally and do special things as a family. I think it's my efficiency I'm disappointed in. Facebook Marketplace maybe killed me last year. I bought and sold a lot of vehicles personally. I had no reason to. Vehicles, motorcycles, some boats, just the stupid shit that I get myself into on the side because a lot of it starts wholeheartedly. Like, I'm helping somebody out by buying this. They need something. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'll get some work done to it. And then, we all know where all those end up. But
Yeah.
that's just it.
I mean, another thing working with your spouse that we oftentimes run into, and this is another yin to the yang, is like burnout. Entrepreneurial burnout is very intense and it's very serious. And we've owned Tim's Fencing. This is going to be our 8th year, right?
Yeah,
7th year,
yeah.
8th year. And I mean, Tim's right about I think it's about once a year. Thank goodness we're not on this same cycle. But
We're
like,
not
I'll get burned out and I'll be like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. I just want to go work at Walmart is what we always joke. We just want to go work
We
at
try to
Walmart.
keep our bills at a Walmartable wage.
Yeah.
That's always it. We like our mortgage to be able to pay it if we both work at Walmart. But honestly, when we really dissect that, it's usually caused by boredom, to be fair. It's
Yeah.
usually not burnout.
Yeah.
But it feels like it.
Feels a little like
We
burnout.
don't like
Yeah.
doing the same thing every day.
And then, about 6 months later, Tim will be like, I don't want to do this anymore. But Tim usually cycles into the let's sell it all and live in a bus and make flower headbands. That's where Tim cycles. And I cycle like I want to quit everything and go work at Walmart.
I'm game for Walmart if it's like in Florida. Like I like Florida. I like the beach.
But-
I don't know. I like the beach.
I don't know what it would be like to be an entrepreneur and have that sort of burnout and those sort of like feelings and not have you to be like, it's okay. Like Tim will usually say something like, I got it, and I know because not only is he my partner, like he's my husband. And when Tim says he's got it, like, I know you've got it, and I can unplug for a minute and like take a deep breath and like refuel whatever emotionally, spiritually, whatever that is. And I hope I can do that for you, but maybe not. Also, Tim needs it a lot less than I do, but
I mean, I think I would never let you burden my worries. I'd probably put them on a staff member before you, to be fair.
damn.
That's just part of the provider nature, though. Like, I don't want you dealing with this shit. Like, that's what I mean. I don't want, and you know that too. It's not like we're having this as a discussion, but
Yeah.
it's just shouldering the burden of loss of whether that's time, money, resources. Also, like what we talked about last week is, there's always going to be a loss if you're not working your absolutely hardest, because I always look at it and I'm like, what could I have got done if I was more efficient? What could I have got done if I just came in a couple of nights a week? What could I have got done if I put the right staff in charge of that? And what was the term? I kept saying, I'm just a loss for words right now on it. But, it's like when you really start capturing all of those potential losses and put them in a bag, like, I think that's what drives me to just not have the day off. Like, I love just getting up and doing the same thing. Like, we get up, we get in the sauna, we cold plunge. Sometimes I work out in the mornings, just depending on what my schedule's going to look at that day. CrossFit a couple days at lunch, run a couple days, lift a bunch of days, and then obviously work sprinkled in there just as much. I mean, that's just the Gap Village. I mean, honestly, we're always working. Like, even if we're at home, we'll respond to an email or something urgent or this or that. But also, I think the big thing to hit on the head in entrepreneurship with your spouse is, there's still obviously got to be quality controls and quality checks. And I think things that you and I have struggled with in the past, and a lot of couples would, is like we back check each other. Like where our jobs do overlap and we both do it, I think we're finally at a point to where we can provide criticism for each other without it being like offensive or a power trip, because there's just times, for instance, like we both fully manage in two different perspectives, but we both fully manage the finances of the company.
but two very different.
Two very different.
I manage day to day, making sure invoicing's happening, checking the little things like that, our cell phone bill is paid and like our utilities are paid, and you manage our finances on a very different perspective.
Sure.
But we've
But they overlap.
They overlap, but we both learn we both can't do the same thing.
Oh, right, exactly. But like even if it's something where like you've already wrecked the bank account and I mostly look at our larger purchases and that overlaps, and I can say to you like, hey, I really don't like this rule in QuickBooks. Like I don't want it to say X. I'm gonna rename it right now as Z. You're gonna have to go back the last few months and recategorize it or whatever. Like we can do that without it causing just the biggest skerfuffle in the world,
I don't know if 6 years ago that could have been the case.
True. We've also had a lot of debates about like credit card expense and how to break it out, and that's been a conversation for 24 months. We just came to a head too. So it's not even like you got to be bold enough to hash it out multiple times if it's needed, because honestly when we have those conversations, like we're both fighting for what's best for our company, because we co-own it.
It's been interesting. It's been fun.
It is interesting.
It's fun.
It is fun. Absolutely.
I feel like we could write a book on something like this. It's complicated.
Just the crazy stories.
Well. Oh, Jane.
Poor Jane.
And
then there's always the other projects that go on, like we're still involved, and it's almost like this last year we've taken a step back and gone to our roots and got back into real estate investing, and we had an opportunity to buy a rental out of state, and so that's been
a lot of fun,
transformative these last few weeks especially.
Yeah.
So like there's a great example of typically I kind of head up the project management on the majority of our construction projects, our remodels, our new constructions and all that, but down there at the beach house, you've just taken that and ran with it to get it prepped for the property management company, which has been honestly a huge relief because we got so much going on here, and you've done a phenomenal job. So I think from one spouse to another, it's cool that, and honestly, that wasn't even something we communicated through. You just did it. We started, because we'd had the pool installed over there, and you're just boom, irrigation, sod, lighting, flower beds, flooring in the house, countertops in the house, even when you were working with Jonathan before and painting it, like that was mainly your contact. Like I've done very little there. I go over there and make a mess when we go.
Yeah, but
get electrocuted.
But this is going back to working with your spouse. We were talking a couple of weeks ago, and you mentioned it multiple times that you were thinking that we should sell that property due to how little we're basically able to use it. It's a property in Merle's Inlet, and we thought we were going to be able to go at least once a month, but turns out life's a little busier than we thought it was, and I didn't really want to get rid of it.
Sure, yeah.
And so I tried to take that burden off of you.
But there's also there's a great example right there. I'd say almost a little bit of still time to time point of contention. And here we are working together for 10 years. But like what's commonly talked about is like, where I don't mind to drive there and road trip there. You prefer just to take the plane, and like it's not, we're taking a jet. We just have a little propeller airplane and we fly it out there. And, but like there's some reality to the transitional months, which are kind of our months we can go the most of severe weather. Like we flew down there, which I think Brantley had a fun time driving back.
Oh, he loved it.
But so we flew down there for Thanksgiving, and it's great, like the Myrtle Beach airport right there. We fly into the same one that you can commercially fly into, but there's a private side of it. It's real red carpet service there too. They know us by name, kind of a deal.
They know the dogs.
The dogs. We put the dogs in the plane. We flew out there. It was a fun trip, and
but we couldn't fly home.
And we kind of knew when we went there, like there's a chance we're going to leave the plane here because there was some weather moving in, and a lot of being a private pilot is just making good it's airplane decision making. It's obviously we have avionics and an autopilot and this and that, like that's pretty much standard equipment in the plane, but there's still just weather you can't fly through, whether you're not certified to or it'd just strictly be too dangerous. And this was definitely going to be a trip where we'd have to do what's called scud running back, where you're flying under the clouds, you're flying lower than you really want to. It is dangerous, it's rough. And we made the decision just to rent a car and drive back.
Oh.
And, a lot of that, it's just a funny story to me because, yeah, we had flexibility because it was around the holidays, and we have flexibility because we have great staff back here. But at the end of the day, we could have stayed 3 or 4 more days and changed Thanksgiving and flew back. But, we rented a Suburban. Brantley thought it was the greatest thing.
Oh, yeah. He thought it was funner than the airplane.
He
I
thought
just
it
think
was
that's
a
the
limo.
wildest thing.
Yeah,
But-
the dogs were comfortable, and we drove back. And it was storming all night driving back, too. It was pretty wild weather. But, there's a point of contention, just one story of the beach house to where plans changed. And maybe that's where I'm just like, you know what? If it's something to where it's too inconvenient to drive, because driving 7 hours is not convenient. I fully realize it. And then also, I only really like to go out of town for 2, 3, 4 days at a time. And then I like to be back here. And Brantley's always got something, or we got something. There's a lot of life, a lot of stuff going on here. And that really was, I was like, I don't know if this out of town stuff's for us. I don't know. We should rethink it all. But you found the solution. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
You got her done.
Thank you.
And with your number one choice of property managers too.
I'm excited. I'm
Very
very excited.
excited.
Well, on that note, we could close out because we have
Hey,
have some properties to go look
We
at.
do have some dirt to go look at and some other, oh man, we gotta go. What time is it? 10:40? 10:30?
10:35.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to go look at those properties. But
There's part 1 of working with your spouse. That wasn't even the nitty gritty.
I'm sorry I cried.
Oh, that's fine. He'll just superimpose a crying emoji face.
All right.
I mean, it is an emotional subject, though. There's been a lot of tears had within TS Wells Inc. A lot of tears. You're not the only one. It's a very interesting.
You're right. Brantley cries a lot too.
And me. I've thrown some tears in there. I remember I really talk about a mental breakdown. I was actually working at a friend's house of ours. Honestly, a project we should have never taken on as a favor. It was a fabrication job. I'm an amateur at best welder. Oh man, those handrails looked badass though, I will say. I was very proud of those. You know where I'm talking about?
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. He's a painter.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And those were good handrails. I want
Yeah.
to put those on when we build our next house. And man, it was just one of those things to where, there were some other very critical projects going on. I think we were fencing for one of the car dealerships we do a lot of work for. Some of the local electric company, we're doing a big job for them. And then I just had to take this on so we could get it off of our books because we pushed it. And I remember I was out there throwing tools, just all pissed off. And I had to humble myself afterwards, but I'm like, my name's on the dang door, and we've been doing this for this many years, and I'm still the one welding these handrails, painting them, installing them. Nothing's working out right. It's a rehab. It was just a project where I bet you I brought those handrails back to the shop 6, 7 times to just get them perfect so I could install them, and I was fit to be tied. I was like, let's sell it all. I don't even care. Give it away. I'm tired of dealing with the stress, performing every day. I can't, it's just one of those.
You had a hard day that day.
Screaming and crying at the same time in a neighborhood looking like a fool.
Yeah, it happens.
That was a fun day.
It happens.
It does happen. And it's just funny because I really, that's just not my personality to lose it. I'm not the guy that it's rare. It's just, I don't lose it. But I did that day. Probably for a week after that, a little bit every day.
You were worn out. You were burnt out. That's okay.
Makes me. Is that bad that agitates me to relive that moment? I'm an idiot.
No.
I just looked like an idiot.
It doesn't agitate.
I'm sure I
think
talked to
that's okay.
Logan that day too, and I was like, I don't know. Just do whatever you want. I'm done making decisions. He probably got a little bit of that out of me last week too. Whatever you want.
Owning a business is, it's an adventure. But we should close out.
All right, adios.
We go look at some properties.
Let's go.
Okay.